This week on Bad Brackets, when you do bad brackets, you do bad brackets for life. Welcome into another edition of Bad Brackets. I'm your host, Randy Isbell, and this week we will celebrate the creation of the New World Order. It happened around this time a long, long time ago, but we are going to celebrate it by looking at who was the best member of the NWO, because they only had about 732 members. So a lot to choose from for this 24-man bracket. But first, let's introduce the contestants this week. One of the three men trying to break the three-way tie at the top of the leaderboard with 5 wins each, Mr. Robert Hagan.
What's up? Too sweet.
Back again is one Jesse Knight. Welcome, Jesse.
For life.
And then, of course, we can't do this episode without the third man, and we're not going to make you wait months to figure out who the third man is. It's David.
Hey, yo.
Hey, don't have the same problems as him, please. Please. All right, we're going to have a lot of fun this week. As I hit the wrong buttons. Hold on. There we go. All right, we're going to have a lot of fun. But, of course, we want to make sure that we go over the rules for those that are watching for the very first time. And if this is your first time watching Bad Brackets, don't forget to do the likes and the comments and the bells and the notifications and all the other YouTube stuff. But other than that, have a lot of fun and disagree with everything that these three are about to say for over the next hour. And let us know in the comments down below. But your rules are simple. Each of these three are going to give me 3 possible members of the NWO that they think are going to be on the bracket here shortly. We'll spin the wheel, figure out the order that they will get to do this draft. Points are going to be awarded based on the seeding of that NWO member. So if it's a 14 seed, you get 14 points. If it's not on the bracket, you get absolutely nothing. Somehow, we are 25 episodes in, and the 22 seed has still never been picked. So, if you get the 22 seed today, you get 3 bonus points. And maybe I have to bump up the bonus points just to incentivize you guys to finally randomly get the 22 seed. Who knows? Before the show, each contestant gave me their predictions for the Final Four and the champion. If they get a Final Four pick right, they get 2 points. If they get the champion correct, they get a 5 whole points. Of course, we are now 25 episodes in, so the wall of winners gets larger and larger. I'm going to start grouping these guys and make it go a bit faster as we continue on the show. And with all of these winners, we do have the Mount Rushmore of winners. 3 of them have 5 wins. That's Robert, Sean, and Eric. Harry was the first to get the 2 wins, so he's still on the Mount Rushmore. But for the, what is this, the 4th or 5th attempt, Doof? He's trying to climb the mountain to surpass Harry. But somebody else is also trying to do the same thing. Jesse is also at 2 wins. So either we're going to break the 3-way tie and have a leader once again for most wins, or Harry will finally get supplanted, on our little Mount Rushmore. Your points leaders haven't really changed too much. David's still in 5th place at 205. Harry's up at 299. Robert once again dropped to 3rd, as Sean was on a couple of weeks ago. He's at 372. Sean's at 386, and Eric way out in front at 475. Definitely helps that he has been on well over half the episodes.
I would say how many he's been on there 22 times or something like that.
He has been on 16 times. Robert is on episode 12. Doof, you're episode 7, and Jesse, this is your 5th appearance on the show. So there you go. Here you go. Let's figure out who gets to go first. Once again, we're back in our normal abode, so I won't be unplugging the audio. So that's nice. As Jesse gets the first pick. Hopefully all the editing went well for that kids episode. I got to do that in the morning.
Still haven't won a wheel.
You still have not won the wheel so much that you will be the last pick. Jesse's first, Robert is second. David, you will get the third pick.
So much
That
pressure.
sliver would probably land on it if you spun it again.
It won't. We'll never know. We will never know how that will work. All right, Jesse, start us off. Now, I was talking to David before the show. I think we can all kind of agree on a good majority of who might end up being in the final four for the NWO. They have some standout members, but I think this is where the drama of this episode is going to be. Who's going to be able to really pick those obscure names that still made the bracket and really get the points? So it's up to you. You get to start us off.
Yeah, I was really hoping to not be first, actually. Man, I want to go. I want to go with it. All right, I'm gonna go with it just because. I mean, you have to. Vincent.
Yeah, there we go.
It is very risky to pick the number one seed right off the bat. But, you never know how this is going to work. All right, Robert.
1 point.
I've seen this guy on a couple different lists, but the totally different spots. He was one of my favorites. I'm going to go with Buff Bagwell.
Buff the stuff.
Good pick. Good pick.
All right, David, you get back-to-back picks.
I think this guy pissed me off a lot, so I'm going to go with Nick Patrick.
Nick Patrick.
Referee.
All right, and your second pick.
He was just always kind of there, so I have a feeling he might just be lingering on the list. So Brian Adams.
Brian Adams. All right, Robert.
This one, I don't know. I don't remember him a ton in there, but on the list, he's there. I'm going to go with the Great Muda.
Great Muda. All right, Jesse. Back-to-back.
Well, my first back-to-back is just getting in Randy's head and knowing how much he likes to do things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Stevie Ray.
Okay.
Fruit booty.
And then I'll go with a relatively, I feel like, maybe safe pick and go with Scott Norton.
Scott Norton. All right, Robert.
That was where I was going to go with my next one. So I'm going to go really obscure, I think. Give me Dennis Rodman.
How is that obscure?
I didn't think he wrestled all that much how many matches did he have? Yeah.
All right, David, final pick.
Well, I guess I only have one actual wrestler on my list. I'll pick Miss Elizabeth.
I thought about having her for my third pick.
There you go. Those are the 9 picks. The points are going to get interesting for sure as we start things off with points. Why not? Right off the bat, you guys get really good at hitting this 13 seed, apparently. But your 13 seed is one Dennis Rodman. 13 points for Robert, but that's not the only points we're giving away in this matchup. Because it's Nick Patrick. Nick Patrick or Dennis Rodman, who was the better member of the NWO? Love that picture of Nick Patrick, too. Everybody have an answer for me? Mm-hmm. Which one was more important to the NWO? Patrick, and Rodman. Robert, explain.
Yeah, well, I erased it twice, and I was going to write Patrick because the more I thought about it, and very true. He was so influential in a lot of those matches, quick counts, all that. But you know, Rodman was part of that whole him coming in with Hogan. I mean, seeing those two walk into the ring together was cool. But I'm not mad at this. Patrick moving on.
David, why'd you go, Patrick?
Because he was such a piece of shit. And it worked. Like there's so many times where, like, as a kid, of course, you still root for the good and bad guys. So I wasn't one of those cool internet fans. But like when I saw Nick Patrick wasn't the referee for Hogan and Luger on Nitro, I figured, well, there might be a chance. And just like anytime you saw Nick Patrick was the referee, you just like, oh, you know, Hogan's gonna win. You know, NWO is gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick's gonna do something.
Jesse, what about you? Why'd you go, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing. He did his job well as being the heel ref, and that's what you want. You wanted that feeling of like, oh man, now that he's out there, there's no chance, which then gives you that swerve feeling when maybe the face does win or something like that, and a little bit better reveal of him as the heel ref too,
Right.
as the
Big tease for a while too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, he was just making mistakes, and then no, he was just doing it the whole time.
I have that same feeling right now with Charles Robinson. Every
Yep.
time I see him come out, I'm like, oh shit, something.
It's a little.
What are they going to do this time?
Little Nate.
All right, let's move on. So we had two non-ish wrestlers. Rodman, I know, did wrestle. I'm sure Patrick had a match or two or whatever. But let's get to some actual legit in the ring, fantastic wrestlers who were part of the NWO. With your 12 seed, there he is, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, and your 21 seed, only because he was only in there for a little bit, Bret the Hitman Hart. Who was the better member of the NWO, Hennig or Hart? All right. Which one moves on? Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig moves on. Is it just because Bret Hart was barely in the NWO?
That's one reason. And also, like, I think it was right after Hennig revealed he was part of NWO is when he smashed Flair's head in the door at War Games, and they made it sound like they killed Flair's career. And I just thought that was a great intro for him. He didn't need it, but I thought he was too good for the group anyways because he was a great wrestler. But they made him seem like a killer when he got brought into it, and he's probably just there to actually put a good wrestler into the group.
Jesse, what about you?
Yeah, just longevity at that point. Like, you know, a sip of water versus few months, however long Kurt was in. He wasn't that long either, I don't feel like, but
Well, he always has back problems.
So but yeah, just the impact Kurt had versus Bret was like, he's in but not in.
Should we call him Papa Axel?
All right, let's go ahead and move on. See who goes up against the one Nick Patrick. It's one of the big names at the 4th spot. It is good old Eazy-E Eric Bischoff. Patrick or Bischoff? Who
piece of shit versus piece of shit.
All right, Patrick or Bischoff? Who moves on? Yeah, of course, Eric Bischoff. All the way, no surprises there. Again, the top of these brackets are kind of self-explanatory at this point, but we'll get into the really good battles as we go along. The first rounds are always the fun ones because then you can get obscure and get into the weeds of the NWO. But these top guys absolutely make sense, as does your 5 seed when you think about the split that the NWO had. One of the main members of the Wolf Pack. How about Sting?
Tomato face.
Battled NWO for over a year and then put on the worst red face paint of all time.
I almost
Sting
picked fake Sting
or
for one of
Hennig?
my picks.
I almost put fake Sting on here for one of my picks. I almost had Sting versus fake Sting. That was a matchup I had in my thought process for a bit. Which one moves on?
I'm silly. I brought this color for a reason. I needed it for this one.
I wonder who David's picking. There's a Sting. There's a Sting.
I wore the color.
There's a Sting. So weird that he battled the NWO and he was all WCW for a while, but then they created another NWO, and now here he is moving on. Jesse, what do you think of Sting as part of the Wolfpack?
It felt wrong, which was, I guess, the entire point of it. But yeah, I mean, that whole era was bad anyways. But Sting definitely brought a new intensity to the Wolfpack that they were needing after the split. So
it's like I didn't hate the Wolfpack at all, but it's like they made the Wolfpack to be cool, but the NWO people already thought was cool. So it was kind of confusing, but
he was still that big. Yeah, he was still that big fan favorite in those guys. He was always the one of those guys bringing people into the show, and I think that's why they followed him so much. Didn't matter which side he was going, if he was Wolfpack or even in the early years of the bright face paint instead of the white.
Surfer Sting was still the best, but I did not like the red face paint on Sting.
It was weird.
Did not work for me. All right, who moves on to our final four? Bischoff or Sting? Really don't think we're going to have a split vote in this one. Robert, let me see yours. Yeah, David. Yeah, full sweep. Yeah, no surprise, no surprise. Bischoff worked perfectly in this setup and really kind of played that character perfectly. I know obviously Vince McMahon became the horrible boss character, but I thought Bischoff really played the sleaze part of his role really, really well.
Like, as much as Piper is known on the mic for all of his career, like, I still remember the promo when he basically revealed Bischoff was NWO. Just the accusation, like, all right, you said he came to my house for the contract. Was there a windy road? Was it a straight road? I was like, oh my gosh, Bischoff's part of them.
Yeah, really, really good. And having a big group like that, you have to have somebody in charge that makes a lot of sense, and it works really well for them. Let's move to the second quadrant, and your 16 seed is one Lex Luger, another one of those guys that battled against the NWO more than he was a part of it. But again, the Wolfpack kind of changed the way all of that worked, so he was a member. And we'll give away some points with the Great Muta.
Nice.
Luger or Muta, who moves on? And who would have thought years later that the Great Muta would now be bigger than Lex Luger?
Ouch.
Like physically bigger or
physically bigger? Like Great Muta has like bulked up, and obviously Lex had his physical stuff. And,
right.
But every time I see Muta now, it's like, damn.
Oh yeah.
You see stuff in the 90s and you forget.
Yeah.
But, all right, who moves on? Ooh, one of our few splits we've had. David, why'd you go Luger?
Because, like, it was not really nothing. His run was with the Wolfpack a lot. Like, Muta was basically like an honorary member to me. And he was pretty much just, to steal a Pritchard line, he was big in Japan. But
yeah,
like which is fine and dandy, but it's just never really saw him in the States as part of it. Like, I thought Chono more than Muta when it came to but like that was any good either.
Robert, why'd you go Muta?
I had kind of that same idea though, and Doof said it. I mean, he was that connection to Japanese wrestling, and maybe that was the why Bischoff and all of them guys were getting him on board, is to get those extra fans in from Japan and following. And for me, there's always one thing that has always stuck out about those Japanese wrestlers, and it was always that spray. And I can see him wrestling, and just the black spray coming out all the time. It just sticks with you, you know.
Yeah, Jesse. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things that got invented in the '90s that, you know, in the 2000s and beyond. Us who were big fans in the '90s then tried to replicate and do things sometimes better, sometimes worse. The NWO was trying to become international by getting the Great Muta in. Bullet Club was more successful in doing that and creating such a ridiculous group, but it was in so many different federations and stuff that it kind of worked out. But it was interesting to see WCW try to branch out.
Yeah, I mean, they did that. And then you saw the branch off later with from Conan to go to the LWO. So they kind of did the same thing with Conan, trying to get the Latin American International on that side. So I think they did a pretty decent job that way. And yeah, pretty much the exact thing Robert was saying. It's just that getting the Japanese crowd, and he had more of an impact, I think, fan wise than Luger did, because Luger was just going to be Luger, and the crowd was going to feel about him, I think, how they felt about him, no matter if he was in the group or not.
All right, we can get to this next matchup. I won't even leave this screen because I already know who's winning. But with a 24 seed, you got to have a little bit of fun, right? Got to have some fun. But first, your 9 seed is Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. Or your 24 seed, Widow Disco Inferno is part of the NWO.
I didn't quite go that risky, but I should have.
Just the fact that when I looked up pictures for Disco Inferno and the NWO, it was like always him in the background. So I was like, that completely makes sense for his character. Go ahead and just show Scott. I'm gonna guess. Yeah. Steiner math. Steiner moves on. No surprise there. Your number 1 seed
is your favorite.
Is it?
Nash.
I thought it was going to be your favorite, but I don't know.
Who's my favorite?
I know who your favorite is. You're a Hall fan. Always have been.
Oh, it's Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash had the longest run in the NWO. He was always there. He was part of the main stable that started it, and he never disappeared. So Nash gets the number 1 spot. Muta or Nash? Yep. There's a Nash. There's a Nash. There's a Nash. Ooh. Getting fancy. Let me just move it over. That one was an easy win. Let's see. This might be a little bit more difficult. Scott Steiner versus the last man who earns a bye in the bracket. Of course, it's Vincent. I had to give him a bye. Vincent versus Scott Steiner. 8 points for this.
You're a kind soul.
I can't believe that's 8 points.
I know. You're lucky it wasn't 1. That joke of Vince. If David was even telling me one of our friends when we were talking about recording this episode, he said Vincent was the 1 seed.
Yeah.
It's just kind of been the meme for so long. It almost happened.
Everybody's
just
saying
for
it's
fun.
funny.
Yeah, absolutely. But who moves on? Scott Steiner or Vincent? That math actually makes sense, David. That is not Steiner. Jesse, why'd you go Vincent other than the memes?
I mean, the memes.
Fair.
Just the fact that he was able to stick around and on the outskirts of that group for as long as he did and turn that into like decades of, I mean, cons and tables and all that. It's impressive. Even if there was negligible impact, it's still fun.
Yeah,
Like we
absolutely.
joke about it, but I was legit torn on this vote because, yeah, all he did was get his ass kicked, but he was good at it. He was always
to say-
there.
You have to say though, Steiner was a big reason why the NWO had a resurgence in that later stages of WCW. This was where Steiner was able to really break apart with his character and get away from the Steiner brothers. Just we're here to throw people around kind of deal.
He thought he couldn't get any bigger until he saw him.
Until he threw tennis balls in his arm, or whatever the hell he did. All right, here you go. Who's going to join Eric Bischoff in the final four? Is it Kevin Nash or is it Scott Steiner? Do we have another clean sweep? A feeling that that's going to be the case till we get to the final four, and then the decisions will be made. David, let me see yours this time. Go with Robert. Yeah, there it is. Clean sweep. Clean sweep.
I remember seeing Kevin Nash before the whole NWO started out at the Lewiston Roundup. We had taken him out to the Lewiston Roundup and went out there, and Tori got the boa from, I forget who was out there wrestling with him in that match. I don't remember the match 100%, but he's one of my favorites. So he just did it to be rancid.
Post NWO though.
Yeah, it might have been when Yeah, but I remember him being there.
It was 2000.
Yeah.
Because my niece was it was the year my niece was born. He was there.
I know
Literally the night that she was born, we were out at the fairgrounds watching the show, and then left from there and went to the hospital and met her. So yeah.
Very nice. Here are your points so far. Robert's in the lead. He has 30. David's at 20. Jesse went with Vincent. Got himself at whole 8 points. Let's move on to the third quadrant. And we've already had a couple of people that are more thought of as non-wrestlers, managers, if you will. These two were wrestlers in their time, but by the time they got to the NWO, more so just managerial types, as we have Ted DiBiase, the first real manager of the NWO.
Next week.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Or Rick Rude.
Oh, I almost picked him too.
The only man to show up on Raw and Nitro on the same night. Who moves on? Oh my God, Forbidden Door is still going on.
Is it really?
Well, I just went on just to kind of look at it, and it's still saying join our coverage. Let's see, what was the last match that they have finished? Oh no, maybe it's. Are they doing a Young Bucks beat 'em up, go crazy thing on that show?
I thought there was a Stadium Stampede or something.
Oh, then that's probably what's going on.
Oh, I know.
Right now.
Blood and Guts is going to be on Dynamite. That's what it is.
Oh, gotcha.
I think.
All right. Well, the championship match is done. So I don't know if that we go on after it, but all right. Who advances? Ooh, the Rude, the $1 Million Man moves on. David, why'd you go Rude?
Well, the reason for being on both shows at once, but I remember like hearing how bad his back actually was, and it just seemed like he can get away with beating everybody's ass and not having to take a bump for it. So he just always seemed to be there, getting in the midst of everything, starting shit and backing it up, and yeah, you always heard he was one of those legit tough guys too, and he just seemed to play it.
Yeah. Jesse, why'd you go $1 Million Man?
Just kind of a foundational member more so than anything. Obviously not the original 3, but the fact that he was there earlier on and had a long run with them, and Yeah, just iconic $1 million man.
Yeah. Robert, what about you?
Well, I think it was the friendship between Ted DiBiase and Ted Turner. And I think Turner had a lot to about bringing him in to try to spike more revenue. And he just had that aura about him. He was always that guy that I remember when I started watching. It was all about the manager side. Even when he was helping out Steve Austin get his stuff going, and I think that just resonates a little bit with me.
There you go. Let's move on, and points are given out. And this one is your 10 seed is Miss Elizabeth. Your 23 seed, good old Scott Norton. 23 whole points for Jesse. 10 for Doof. Who moves on, though, Miss Elizabeth or Scott Norton? Just so you guys know, David and Robert both with 30 points. Jesse has 31.
Ooh.
That is where we're at right now. A lot of fun. But who moves on, Elizabeth or Norton? Yes, Miss Elizabeth all the way. I do totally get why Jesse took Scott Norton in the draft because he seemed to be there a lot, but man, was he boring.
Yeah.
Yep.
He had the look.
He
That's for
existed. He existed the heck out of that role.
Yeah, they even looked up because I knew he was New Japan champion at one point. So oh, let's look up some of his matches from there. And yeah, it's just as boring there too. He's just big.
Miss Elizabeth gets the advancement. We'll go right on to your 2 seed. And no, this is also not Scott Hall. I had to put Hogan here. He was super influential toward the NWO. So Hogan or DiBiase. Who moves on? All right, show me Hogan. Double H. I will give Hogan. I'm not the biggest fan of Hulk Hogan as a human being, but I have to give him credit. Quite the turn to go from babyface to heel and really make it work.
Yeah.
Speaking of Double H, Double J was almost on my radar for the draft. Almost.
I have a feeling he's going to be a 11, 12-ish area, so I didn't want to pick him.
No. Totally fair. But Hogan definitely earned his 2 spot because, man, he made it work.
Yeah.
And really extended his career because before the NWO happened, he was really floundering as Hogan in WCW. I mean, his time battling the Dungeon of Doom did not help his career at all. But I really wanted to create some fun matchups, and I don't always just look at the first round. I look beyond, and you guys fell right into my trap.
Oh, it was Macho Man.
Throw
Savage
up there. Yep.
Savage or Miss Elizabeth. The couple has to battle it out. One.
And you're not looking into the third round either?
I am.
I mean, realistically, at this point, we have Hogan, Savage, and Miss Elizabeth. So even
That's
right
true.
now, it's kind of a fun triangle.
I feel like we're condoning domestic right now. Husband versus wife.
Well,
He would never.
I'm only condoning domestic when Rhea shows back up and does it to Dom.
Yeah.
All right, who moves on? Savage advances. Another guy who really extended his career with the NWO. Obviously, he didn't have the character change that Hogan did, but Savage really did a lot with the NWO.
It was crazy. When the network first came out and I was watching old stuff, his feud with DDP really made DDP.
Yeah,
that was great. And he didn't. I know he won the title at one point too from Hogan. I think he might have been higher up and almost made my final four, but it just got so confusing with his injuries and if he was going to turn on Hogan again or not. And but his run of DDP really was awesome.
Yeah, I did just his aura that he brought to the arenas. I think has to be the big part. But you guys touched on it earlier, and Jesse just said it a minute ago. The triangle between Missy, Hogan, and
That's not in NWO though.
but
It doesn't
they
count.
were that was part of it though. They were all together.
Yeah,
I mean,
in
it's
the
still,
WWF.
Yeah, no, it's the aura. Whenever that music hits and he comes out, the crowd gets up. He could take a beating. He could deliver a beating. He made people look good. Like you said, he made DDP at 40 years old, made DDP. So, yeah.
And he made going to graduation's fun.
Fair. All right. Who goes on to the final four? Age-old question, Hogan or Savage? Who was the better member of the NWO? Let's start with Jesse this time. I've not started with you yet. Third man. Should have been Sting.
Or maybe.
No.
Or maybe. Robert.
24-inch pipe.
24-inch pipe.
And
I
Hogan
went
all the way. Poor Savage. 3 clean sweeps. None of this is surprising because, again, the top of the NWO is pretty set. It's the fun matchups as we get there. All right. Points did not change there, but they will right here. With your 14 seed, good old Buff Bagwell, or the 19 seed Conan before he broke up to the LWO. Bagwell or Conan, who moves on? Big point total for Robert, but is it enough? Who advances?
Too obscure.
I honestly don't know that reference.
Conan's.
Is it Conan's? Conan moves on. Robert, you're a big fan of Buff, apparently.
I did. I loved his in-ring work. I mean, he was always one of those ones, and even when he was getting the shit beat out of him, I mean, big smile on his face, and he just had that. I don't think he got the big matches he deserved.
He got the biggest match in WCW history when his mom was put on a forklift. Jesse, why'd you go Conan?
I mean, I alluded to it earlier with the LWO stuff. So being the influential and bringing that Latin side, and I just like Conan. There's something about him that I just like Conan.
Yeah, that's fair.
Same here. Like I got to do the peel my potatoes because I remember hearing on his podcast, like he'd always tell people to toss the salad and peel his potatoes. And I guess the higher ups wanted him to stop saying peel my potatoes, even though tossing salad is a lot worse. He was just like, I just wanted to say it at the end because it sounded stupid. People liked it. He was a great mouthpiece.
Get over. All right. The moment you've been waiting for almost. We'll figure out if somebody finally got the 22 seed. But first, your 11 seed is the Giant. And your 22 seed, we still have Bryan Adams or Stevie Ray floating out there. It is neither of those.
Stevie Ray.
But somebody's going to hit themselves because it's the one and only Jeff Jarrett. Jesse.
Man.
The moment you said it, I was like, oh, we were almost there. We almost hit it. Jeff Jarrett or the Giant. See, I don't pick obscure, ridiculous things for 22. I almost had Jarrett up higher. I knew he was going to make the bracket because he was basically the leader of the last iteration of the NWO.
If Norton wasn't taken, I might have. No, he said him first.
Giant
but-
or Jarrett?
I was hoping for some of that Booker T versus Stevie Ray magic.
But Booker T never was he ever in? Well, I guess he was part of the NWO and WWE, so he would have counted. I did not go the WWE route when I made this bracket. I did not put a Shawn Michaels or.
Wonder why.
I wish I honestly wish I would have thought about that with Booker T and Stevie Ray, but I avoided the WWE version of the NWO. All right, who moves on? Giant or Jarrett? Ooh, the Giant moves on. Dude, I'm with you. I think Jarrett is underrated, and I've always been a big fan of his work.
Like what Bully Ray said when he says he hates cool heels. Like Jarrett was far from a cool heel. You hated him. You wanted to see him lose. And I think like when he was with the Four Horsemen, he still had his WWE garb and he just seemed out of place. But when he cut the hair and was talking slap nuts and all that, it just put him up there.
I totally forgot about that.
Oh yeah.
So what I tell people all the time is like wrestling has changed because of the NWO so much, where the cool heel is what everyone wants to be. So they can say what they want, but people will still, cheer them and do all that. No,
and buy their merch.
Being exactly. Buy the merch to make the money. It's like being like Jeff Jarrett, where nobody likes you. Then you're doing a good job. So what I said for years about Baron Corbin. Was he great in the ring? No, but he did his job so well.
Yeah.
You despised him in every character he did. But he did his job perfectly and played those roles up like the bosses wanted. That's exactly what Jarrett did. The whole rap is crap era was great too, but he just got the 22 seed because he was part of the NWO when WCW was basically dead.
Reboot 7.
At that point. But Jesse, talk about the Giant for a moment. That was a good reveal for him too.
Yeah, good reveal for him. Bringing that monster aspect to the group, which I mean, he's not low seed, but lower seeded because they didn't really need it. They had Nash, who's 7 foot tall. They had Hall, who's a little step below 7 feet tall. Like they had these big guys, and they had 800 guys. So why do they need a Giant? But yeah, still that aspect of like, okay, yeah. In case you weren't going to be dead already, now it's like, oh, and we brought a Hulk.
Right.
Like,
maybe I wish Harry was here because he remembers these things better than me. Did the Giant and Nash ever team up to be a giant tag team for the NWO? I think that would have been really smart.
It was always Hall and Nash, and Giant was always like either fighting the NWO or back in it.
I would have thought that maybe one of the stints where Hall was out dealing with his personal stuff. Giant and Nash would have been fun.
Yeah, Giant had so many random tag partners in WWE that he should have been able to make it work in WCW at least once. But
right. All right, let's move on. And of course, your 3 seed, we all know who it is. It's the other member of the original 3. One, Scott Hall. I just put him 3rd because he had his own personal issues and he was in and out. So
I won't even write it.
Yeah, I'll just hit the button. No surprise there. Any guesses on who the final entrant into this bracket is?
7.
X-Pac.
Yeah, well, Doof made the joke about it. Jesse got it right. It's 6. 6 had to be the 6th seed. I mean, it wrote itself. Big man or little man, who moves on? 6 or the Giant? Who was the 5th member? Was it Giant? Was Giant 5th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously 6 was the 6th member and Ted DiBiase was the 4th. I was just blanking if Giant was before or after.
Yeah.
All right, who moves on?
Wall Street.
Yeah. 6. Well, he was an X later, but we'll count it for 6. Hagen, why'd you go Giant?
That he felt Giant felt like he was kind of the muscle behind keeping everybody away from things. There you go. So I just big fan.
big fan of the Big Show. There you
But-
go.
Ooh.
Well, you know,
Well,
You
with
already
Big
know
Show's
where we're
Big
going
Show,
with
that
this
could have been
one.
their tag team name too, the Big Show.
Is there any chance it is not Scott Hall advancing into our Final Four? Again, the drama of who was going to make the Final Four was the bottom of the barrel for this episode. It was just who was going to get the points. Go ahead. Just show me Hall. Absolutely. Scott Hall.
You're missing a word there, Doof, isn't it? Hey yo.
Hey, yo.
Hey
He
yo.
didn't have time. He did not have time to
It's a lot of letters.
write those. Also, by the way, this will be a battle for most bonus points awarded in an episode between everybody.
No, it won't be because I'm out of it because you paired up. I went wrestlers, and so my
That's your fault.
Final Four are wrestlers, not.
But again, you're missing the point just because you
Well-
missed on one. As far as the most bonus points given away in one episode, this is going to be up there. It is him and
The wrestling
him.
game one, we were pretty high up there. There's a lot of us calling those.
Yeah, that's true too. Guess it's another stat sheet I need to start figuring out. Go back and figure out who got all the bonus points.
I guess Brian Adams is more boring than Scott Norton, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was the Stevie Ray one. If I would have thought about a WWE version of WWE and come out with that really good one, I think Stevie would have made the bracket. Yeah. Brian
almost
Adams. I don't even remember. Like, obviously, I know he was part of it, but Brian Adams is not somebody I thought of as being a member of the NWO. I always put him in the Vince Russo group.
Like I almost thought about putting Horace as mine other pick because I almost thought you might put him as 24 with Hogan as 1 or something.
Nah, Disco Inferno made far more sense.
Yeah. So I was doomed either way.
All right, let's get into our Final Four matchup. Now we get into the fun ones. Bischoff or Nash? Who is the better NWO member?
This sucks.
Let's start with the man who thinks this sucks.
I got to write mine down.
He really thinks it sucks.
Okay.
I was really hoping to say that, and then all three of you looked it up. I think it sucks. All right, David, show it. Ooh, you went Nash. I think I know where Robert went. I probably know where Jesse went too, but we'll try Jesse. Yeah, full sweep. Full sweep. Not surprising where Hagen went. He was talking about non-wrestlers, so I kind of figured he was going to eliminate the non-wrestler there. Nash moves on, but does he go up against Hogan or does he go up against Hall? Let's start with Robert. Hall. David. Ooh, Jesse, break the tie. Hulk Hogan moves on. So the outsiders will not have a battle in the championship game. It's the battle of the H's. Oh, it's not. That was the battle of the H's. We just had the battle of the H's. There we go.
Heaven Hash is going to
Edit.
go up against Hulk Hogan.
Nash or Hogan, who moves on?
I just want to write Heaven Hash to be that guy now.
Sorry, it's the V's versus the H's. Vinny Vegas or Hogan, which one moves on?
Oz.
Yeah,
Oz
Yep.
versus.
Let's start with Jesse. Let's go to Robert.
Oh, I'm adding one thing. Hold on.
Okay. Well, comes down to David, who was the best member of the NWO. Kevin Nash, no, Hulk Hogan somehow wins a bad bracket. You should all be ashamed of yourself.
I feel dirty, but at the same time, it's the right move. Without Hogan, there would have been an NWO, but it wouldn't have become NWO. I think similar to like further iterations of invader groups like Nexus and Core, like it still would have happened, but it would have fizzled out a lot quicker without the big turn of Hogan and that star power and that, oh my gosh, even if Bobby the Brain Heenan kind of ruined the moment a little bit.
Well, that's what you get for not telling the commentators.
Yeah.
Heenan was just playing it off because I don't think he was like, oh, there's no way it's Hogan, so I'm going to do what I always do.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife earlier tonight about it. I'm like, it just was that moment of him bagging on Hogan, like, no, he's probably a bad guy, and then turned out, oh shoot,
he was right.
Yeah. Like I meant to watch this on Scramble Vision when it happened, and like, because I didn't even think of looking at the internet back then. We might have just gotten it, but when I watched Nitro the next night, and all the announcers are just like dogging on Hogan, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Hogan was the guy?" And then you see the ring and how much impact that all had. Kids crying, legit, and it was huge.
Being thrown in there.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, here are all your bonus points. Only 2 picks did not make the final 4. Jesse had Savage, not Bischoff. Robert had Steiner, not Bischoff. David nailed all 4 and got the champion. That's a big bonus for him. Robert, you went Nash as your champion. But what does that do to the total points?
I almost put Savage instead of Eric also.
It was Eric or Savage for me, and I was like, last minute, okay, I'll go with Savage, and I should have gone Eric.
Yeah, like I said, the top 3, I knew Hogan, I knew Hall, I knew Nash, and all 3 of you, of course, then nailed those, and it was just who was going to be the 4th. I would have went Bischoff myself too. I was always a big fan of what he was able to do, and I like listening to his podcast now too. I mean, does he ever take responsibility for some of the bad things he did? Nah, not really. Sometimes he will, but not as often as he probably should. But anybody that bashes on Tony Khan I'm a big fan of. So Bischoff and Corny have a
WCW or the WCW versus the Monday Night Wars DVD when they were talking about DX invading and say they got their ticket free. Then Bischoff and they cut to him. He's like, "Oh, they got me." Yeah. He wasn't shy about that one. That cracked me up.
All right. A lot of bonus points were given away. And that means your winner of this episode and your first 6-time winner, Robert, hangs on with his 50 points. No Bryan Adams and no Stevie Ray really changed the tide of this episode. And once again, David and Jesse unable to climb Mount Everest, and Harry, who has not been able to be on an episode since episode 10, is still on the Mount Rushmore. Congratulations, Robert.
Well, the big thing, I was sweating bullets knowing that both of them went Hogan when I saw I was the only Nash person. So I figured they caught me in the bonus points. So, but dude, we almost threw up 150 total points. I'm highly impressed.
A lot of points were given away in this episode. That is for sure. Jesse, last thoughts?
Double J. I mean, I've hated it. I've hated him for 20 plus years now. I guess I'll just keep hating him.
Yeah, he cost you a win. And he cost you being able to finally be that person to get the 22 seed. David, final thoughts for you?
Yeah, I think we got it right as much as like from like 2004 onward, we would probably, our minds would want to disagree, but
No, I still disagree. I wish it was Hogan or Nash and Hall at the end, but that's just
Yeah, it was hard to pick. Like I was torn between Hogan and Nash. I mean, like as kind of BS as it was, Nash was the one who dethroned Goldberg as part of the Wolfpack.
no. And if I didn't have my bitterness, my seeding should have been Hogan 1 and Bischoff 4 to have those two go at it. So then we could have had the Hall and Nash semifinal.
Yeah.
But I just cannot put myself to put Hogan at the top. So there you go. Robert is your first.
Put Bischoff at the top.
Yeah. But I did not. But I put Jarrett 22, and I really thought somebody was going to hit this one. And I'll do that close.
I thought he was going to be a top 10, so I didn't pick him.
Yeah, that's fair. Next week, Robert will be back to try to defend his title. He'll be back with Brian and Eric as we celebrate the MLB All-Star Weekend and look at the best moments in all of those weekends. So home run derby counts, the game counts, all of those crazy moments that go on, not just in the game themselves. So it'll be really fun to see where they go. And that one's going to be difficult to nail specific moments because there are a lot of them. But that's next week. Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe as well. And do all the other YouTube-y stuff. And for now, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Let us know where they got it wrong and who you would have picked as the best NWO member of all time. But until then, it's fitting for the NWO member that made it into the Final Four. But don't forget, good brackets don't last forever, but bad brackets do.